While the hidden rooms of the young republic were being prepared, another current moved in the open air. It did not begin with skulls, oaths, or closed doors. It began with a question. What if God could still answer? In this chapter, we turn from secrecy to sincerity, from hidden knowledge guarded by degree to the possibility that an ordinary soul could reach upward and receive. This is part 11 of Secret Societies, Karma, and the Final Choice. Sincerity opens the veil from below.
Chapter 6: The Rediscovery of Sincerity. While the hidden rooms of the young republic were being prepared, another current moved in the open air. It did not begin in a university society. It did not begin among men already marked for influence. It did not begin with skulls, oaths, or closed doors. It began with a question. The soul of Anchar, which had carried the gravity of George Washington, returned to the earth in a very different form. In Washington, that current had stood at the head of armies and held the center of a revolution. In Joseph Smith, it entered the unsettled religious wilderness of early America. The change was not accidental. The age required a different kind of leadership. Washington had been asked to help birth a nation. Joseph would be asked to disturb the certainty of its soul. America in those days was young, restless, and spiritually loud. Preachers crossed the countryside. Revivals stirred towns into trembling. Churches argued doctrine with the seriousness of war. The Bible was everywhere, but agreement was rare. Each denomination claimed its portion of truth, and many sincere people stood between them wondering why heaven, if it was real, seemed to speak in so many competing voices. Into that confusion came a boy with a question simple enough to be dangerous. What if God could still answer? This was the spark. The universe is always speaking to its creation, but not every age is equally willing to listen. Some ages demand proof. Others demand tradition. Others demand permission from those already seated in authority. But sincerity has a way of bypassing gates. A sincere question, asked without performance, opens a kind of doorway. It does not command heaven. It does not force revelation. But it creates a clear place inside the soul where something higher may answer. That was the importance of Joseph Smith. Not merely the man. Not merely the church that later formed around him. The deeper importance was the reintroduction of a radical possibility, that a human soul, ordinary and uncredentialed, could reach upward and receive. The story of golden plates appeared absurd to many. That was part of its function. A polished doctrine can be admired from a distance. A respectable philosophy can be accepted without changing the heart. But a strange story forces a different kind of response. It asks the soul to step beyond reputation, beyond inherited opinion, beyond the safety of appearing reasonable. It asks for a leap. Not everyone should take the same leap. Not every soul is called through the same door. The universe has never spoken in only one language. Across the world, sincere seekers in many religions receive guidance, comfort, correction, and light. A prayer in a mosque, a chant in a temple, a hymn in a chapel, a meditation beneath a tree, each may become an opening when the soul is honest. But the latter-day revelation served a particular role in the unfolding American story. It challenged the religious machinery of its time. It suggested that doctrine was not finished. It suggested that angels had not retired into the past. It suggested that Scripture itself might still be alive, not as a closed monument, but as an ongoing conversation between heaven and earth. To the established churches, this was intolerable. To skeptics, it was foolishness. To the sincere, it was a test. That test mattered. A person could not approach such a claim casually. Either it was dismissed outright, or it forced the heart to ask whether heaven might be stranger, nearer, and more active than respectable religion had allowed. In that question, deeper currents could ignite. Faith is often misunderstood as belief without evidence. But in the higher sense, faith is movement before full sight. It is the willingness to act on a light that has not yet become daylight. It is not blindness. It is trust placed into motion. This is why faith has power. When a soul acts sincerely toward the higher realms, something changes inside the soul itself. The act creates room. It loosens the grip of the visible world. It tells the universe, I am willing to be taught. That willingness is precious. The world of control hates sincerity because sincerity cannot be fully managed. It may be influenced, imitated, or pressured, but true sincerity belongs to the private chamber of the soul. No institution can manufacture it. No hierarchy can own it. No secret order can counterfeit it for long. A sincere soul becomes difficult to possess. This was the counterweight to the magicians. Where secrecy gathered power behind a veil, sincerity opened the veil from below. Where hidden orders trained men to guard knowledge by degree, testimony allowed ordinary believers to say, I have felt something for myself. Where ambitious souls sought leverage over the many, the sincere soul discovered a direct line to the higher current. This did not make the new religion perfect. No movement entering the world remains untouched by human weakness. Once revelation becomes institution, it must pass through committees, ambition, fear, pride, loyalty, sacrifice, and misunderstanding. Every church, however inspired its beginning, must eventually wrestle with the clay of its members. The universe knew this. It did not require perfection. It required a vessel. The newly forming Latter-day Saint movement became one such vessel. It gathered people willing to be considered foolish for the sake of something they had felt. It created a community where testimony mattered, where spiritual experience could be spoken aloud, and where the ordinary person could imagine heaven taking notice of their life. That was no small thing. The modern world was beginning to harden. Science was sharpening its instruments. Industry was rising. Money was learning new forms of power. Secret societies were discovering how to shape men quietly before they shaped nations. In such an age, the universe needed sincerity to remain available. It needed a people trained to believe that heaven still spoke. Again, this was not the only place such sincerity existed. It burned in many faiths. It appeared in humble lives far from any organized religion. It moved through mothers, monks, farmers, mystics, children, and dying men who finally whispered honest prayers. But the American Restoration gave that current a public signpost. It said, the heavens are not closed. That claim alone disturbed the world. The golden plates became more than an artifact in the story. They became a symbol of hidden knowledge brought into the open, not through elite secrecy, but through naive obedience. Unlike the closed rooms of the brotherhoods, the plates were not presented as the possession of a superior class. They were tied to witness, translation, testimony, and the unsettling idea that God could choose the weak things of the world to confound the wise. This was Anshar's current in a new key. Washington had carried Jupiter as public gravity. Joseph carried Jupiter as prophetic disruption. Both roles gathered people. But where Washington gathered a nation around independence, Joseph gathered seekers around the possibility of living revelation. He became, for those who followed him, a center of spiritual momentum. The world resisted him immediately. It had to. Any movement that reopens direct access to heaven threatens those who profit from distance. If the soul can speak with God, then power must compete with conscience. If revelation can appear outside approved channels, then institutions must defend their borders. Conflict followed. Mockery followed. Persecution followed. And through those pressures, sincerity was tested. That was part of the design. A testimony that costs nothing may remain shallow. A testimony pressed by ridicule, exile, and danger either collapses or becomes rooted. The early saints were forced to discover whether they believed because the story was pleasant, or because something inside them had truly awakened. Many suffered. Some broke. Some became harder than they should have. Some became luminous. This is how all religious vessels work in the world. They gather both the pure and the unfinished. They create rooms where souls may rise, but also where pride and control may enter. No vessel made of people is safe from people. Still, the current mattered. While the magicians learned to shape the unseen through secrecy, the sincere learned to touch the unseen through faith. Both were forms of access. One moved through hidden knowledge. The other moved through open-hearted trust. The difference was not small. The path of secrecy tends to ask, who is worthy to know? The path of sincerity asks, who is willing to ask? In the long unfolding of the story, both currents would be needed. The secret orders would stir buried karma and bring old powers closer to the surface. The sincere communities would preserve the possibility that ordinary souls could survive that stirring without losing their connection to heaven. The universe was preparing more than a church. It was preparing a refuge of testimony. A quiet structure in the background, one that could be turned to in a future hour when the old forces had grown bold and mankind needed reminders that heaven had never gone silent. For now, that purpose remained hidden. Joseph did not need to understand the whole design. His followers did not need to understand it. Like all souls inside the veil, they had to live sincerely within the part of the story given to them. They prayed. They gathered. They believed. And somewhere above the noise of mockery and devotion, above the churches that condemned him and the believers who followed him, the universe watched another necessary current return to the earth. The magicians had found hidden law. The sincere had found living heaven. And the balance of the age shifted again.
In the next interlude, the story moves from living heaven into the deeper memory of America itself. Its sincerity reopened the veil from below. The next question is what America was being prepared to become as both hidden power and open testimony grew side by side.